Sir, at this point, you should have just moved to a different country. Our one and only technician is back in yet another unfortunate situation. After everything that happened in the first story, Hyeonsu changes his name, moves to the middle of nowhere, and gets a new job trying to start over, only to end up in the orbit of another obsessive weirdo. So today we're discussing Stalker 2 from There Are No Demons. We open with our one and only technician introducing himself as Hyung-sung Kim to his new team at a small trading company. Everyone greets him, and he takes a seat while the manager hands him a stack of materials to familiarize himself with. The manager asks if he smokes. Hyeonsu says no. The manager wastes no time telling him that smoking is a terrible habit. Then 5 seconds later, this man walks outside for a cigarette break. Hyeonsu is a little confused, but one of his coworkers introduces herself and asks why he looks so nervous. She jokes that it's nice to finally have someone in the office who doesn't smoke. He asks if that's everyone on the team, and she hesitates. Then she says there's one more employee, but he's currently away on a business trip. The way she makes it clear she does not like this man. The workday passes, and after work, Hyeonsu heads back to his apartment. The second he reaches the front door, he stops and sniffs. Then he walks over to his bed and checks underneath it. Unfortunately, he can't throw the thing away since it came with the apartment. At this point, he'd probably rather sleep on the floor. Hyeonsu isn't just a survivor. He's a victim in hiding. The female stalker was never caught. She vanished without a trace, and police believe she may have had an accomplice helping her. To disappear from her radar, Hyeonsu changed his name and moved to a completely different region. He even broke up with Hyojin just in case that woman ever came after her again. He used to run from the smell of failure. Now he runs from the memory of that woman's smell. Some scents never leave you. Even now, he swears he can still smell it lingering around him like a wound that never properly healed. The next morning at work, Hyeonsu catches a familiar odor and quietly asks, "Huh? What's that smell?" A voice suddenly responds asking if he's the new employee. When Hyeonsu turns around, he nearly jumps out of his skin. This man is huge. Hyeonsu has questions right away. Why is he so tall? Why is he built like that? And why does he look like he collects teeth as a hobby? This man introduces himself as Manager Lee and explains he couldn't meet him yesterday because he was away on his business trip. He reaches out for a handshake. Hyeonsu politely grabs his hand and instantly regrets it. His hand is damp, sticky. Manager Lee laughs and asks if he's shy. Hyeonsu says he's looking forward to working with him. Another manager walks over and asks if he's ready for a smoke break. Manager Lee laughs and says he must have run out of cigarettes again. Before leaving, Mr. Lee walks over to a coworker named Sunju and tells her she looks beautiful today. She looks uncomfortable right away. Then he points out that she changed her lip tint color. She awkwardly admits he's right. Manager Lee smiles and says he's a very detail-oriented man. Then follows it up with, "But don't fall for me. I may be sensitive, but I can be dangerous too." Sunju laughs politely while looking like she'd rather launch herself through the window. Manager Lee built like the type of dude who starts screaming the second he hears a woman in game voice chat. Eventually, the other manager drags him away and the office collectively breathes easier. Later that evening, Hyeonsu returns home. Before entering, he carefully covers the keypad while entering his passcode. Seems somebody learned a few lessons from the last stalker. Then suddenly a voice behind him says, "Oh, so this is where you live." Hyeonsu nearly launches himself into orbit. He spins around ready to die and sees Sunju. She starts laughing, asking if she really scared him that badly, then offers him a hand up. Hyeonsu apologizes, and she asks if he's always this jumpy. He apologizes again, and she tells him to stop apologizing. He reflexively apologizes for apologizing. At this point, she's trying not to laugh. She explains she lives right next door and says this is basically the only decent apartment complex anywhere nearby. Then she notices he's still holding her hand. She asks if he's planning to let go anytime soon. Hyeonsu drops it at once and apologizes for the third time. Sunju tells him to relax since she's the one who startled him in the first place. Then she asks if he'd like to grab a beer at the convenience store. No pressure. She just figured they should celebrate being coworkers and neighbors. Plus, she has a lot of company tea she'd love to share. Hyeonsu cautiously agrees to grab a beer with Sunju. As they sit outside the convenience store talking, she explains the job really isn't that difficult as long as you're careful with the number. The conversation drifts between work, coworkers, and life in the area. For the first time in a long time, Hyeonsu feels comfortable. The smell isn't there, the paranoia isn't there, and for a few hours, he almost feels normal again. Sunju tells him that if he ever has questions, he can always ask her since they live right next to each other. Hyeonsu thanks her, but deep down he feels guilty because Hyojin is still living in hell, and here he is, sitting with another woman laughing like everything's normal. As he watches Sunju laugh, a thought quietly crosses his mind. How much longer do I have to live with this smell? The next day at work, the odor returns. At first, it's faint, then stronger, until it feels like someone is burning a hole into the back of his skull. Hyeonsu starts looking around the office trying to figure out where it's coming from, and then he freezes. Standing behind him is Manager Lee, just staring at him with intense eye contact. The kind of stare that makes you want to check if he's on a most wanted list. Hyeonsu glances away, then looks back. Manager Lee is still staring. And listen, I know Hyeonsu is worried about the smell right now, but more importantly, why does it feel like Manager Lee hates him? That evening, Hyeonsu makes his way back to his apartment. As he punches in the keypad, he suddenly catches movement out the corner of his eye. His heart stops. For a split second, he swears he sees her, standing at the end of the hallway. Hyeonsu immediately jerks his head towards the movement, but nothing. The hallway is empty. He stands there for a moment, trying to calm himself down before finally heading inside. Maybe he's just tired. Maybe he's still paranoid. Maybe underneath his bed, a mound of hair shifts. Hyeonsu doesn't see it. He starts changing his clothes after work while the pal slowly crawls forward. Then suddenly, his stalker emerges from underneath the bed, smiling, grinning, looking like she just found buried treasure. "I found you, my one and only technician. I've missed you so much." Hyeonsu screams, and she starts laughing. "Did you really think I wouldn't be able to find you just because you ran away?" Hyeonsu jolts awake. Just a dream. But the woman is still haunting him, just like the smell. The next day at work, Hyeonsu sits staring blankly at his computer when one of the manager walks over. He says Hyeonsu has seemed distracted lately, that he needs to loosen up a little. Then he invites him to the company welcome dinner that evening. Apparently, everyone is grabbing drinks after work. The manager tells him it's completely optional. Meanwhile, Manager Lee is standing in the background staring at him. Hyeonsu hesitates for a second. Then the panel immediately cuts to him at the company dinner, which means they peer pressured this man. The friendly manager tells Hyeonsu it must be tough replacing the previous employee. Apparently, she quit without warning. Then he comments that Hyeonsu doesn't seem like much of a drinker, which is hilarious because this man is already halfway into another dimension. Meanwhile, Manager Lee suddenly asks, "Where's Seonju?" Another coworker explains she left after the first round earlier, and Manager Lee looks annoyed. Bro was devastated. The manager keeps trying to teach Hyeonsu how to drink, while Manager Lee sits there looking like somebody canceled his birthday party. You know those dudes that ask where my hug at every function? Yeah, that's him. Eventually, the others start helping the drunk manager home. Even Hyeonsu offers to help, but Manager Lee quickly tells him to sit back down because he has something he wants to discuss. He asks Hyeonsu if he knows Seonju. Hyeonsu says no. Manager Lee doesn't seem convinced and says the two of them look pretty close. Hyeonsu quickly explains that Seonju is just friendly with everyone. There's nothing going on. Manager Lee decides to tell him a secret. He tells him that they're actually seeing each other. Hyeonsu is shocked. "You and her?" And he says, "Dude, who else would I be talking about? She's the only one in the office." Then he laughs. "Unless you expect me to date the boss." Hyeonsu awkwardly laughs along, but internally every alarm bell from that last story starts going off. Manager Lee keeps talking. They've had dinner together, drinks together, and according to him, he's dated enough women to know when one likes him. Hyeonsu feels sick because he's heard this exact logic before, and it did not end well. Manager Lee leans forward and says Seonju has been playing hard to get lately, and at that moment, Hyeonsu realizes he needs to warn her because this conversation is starting to sound way too familiar. Later that night, we finally see Manager Lee return home. He opens the door and smiles. "Honey, I'm home," then pauses. "Huh? Something good on the telly?" The woman sitting on the couch doesn't respond. She doesn't even look at him. Manager Lee walks over and sits beside her, still talking and smiling. Then we finally see who he's speaking to, and it's a doll, a literal doll. And this man has been carrying on a full conversation with it. Manager Lee asks why she's ignoring him. Then he demands a kiss. The doll, unsurprisingly, remains a doll. This makes him angry. He starts accusing it of acting out lately, like there's some married couple going through a rough patch. Then he threatens it, saying it doesn't want to end up locked away like Mijong, because that's what happens to people who disrespect him. And while he's saying all of this, he's still talking to a doll. The next episode opens with Manager Lee walking into work. "The world is beautiful, and I am happy." At least that's what he keeps telling himself. His coworkers greet him, and the boss calls him in for a smoke break. Apparently, the company superstar is also the company's cigarette supplier. Manager Lee asks if he ran out again, and the boss laughs, then compliments him on losing weight. Manager Lee smiles. "The world is beautiful, and I am happy. Meanwhile, one of the female employees thanks him for noticing she changed her foundation. Manager Lee lights up immediately. She says nobody else ever notices. He tells her to call him Oppa when it's just the two of them. She laughs awkwardly and agrees. Manager Lee practically ascends into heaven. Riding off that high, he smiles until the smile disappears. A scale slowly forms across his face. The room is disgusting. Trash piled everywhere. Empty containers, garbage covering the floor, the plastic doll still sitting on the bed. And judging from the state of things, let's just say this man has an unhealthy relationship with that doll. Manager Lee stares at the ceiling. The world isn't beautiful, and I am not happy. The next day at work, we catch the cycle repeat. The boss asks another employee if they've been losing weight. The employee laughs, the exact same compliment, the exact same conversation. And Manager Lee realizes none of it is special. He wasn't special. The compliments aren't special. As he walks away, he overhears coworkers talking behind his back. One says they can't stand being around him, and they can't get used to his face or his smell. The boss tries defending him, saying he's good at his job, but the others don't care. One even asks why they don't just fire him. The boss admits the truth. Most of Manager Lee's clients come from his father. Ever since his father passed away, he's been steadily losing them. Manager Lee quietly listens from around the corner, grinding his teeth. The company superstar. Yeah, sure. Later, he approaches the same female coworker again, tells her she looks pretty, asks if she changed her foundation. This time, she's annoyed. The second he walks away, she mutters, "Jesus, what a creep." And just like that, another fantasy shatters. Back at home, Manager Lee sits home alone in his apartment surrounded by garbage. He talks about how he fills the emptiness with food, 2-liter bottles of cola, hamburgers, and God knows how much fried chicken. Anything to make the feeling go away. The room fills with trash. His body fills with trash. His life fills with trash. Then his expression changes, because deep down he doesn't believe he's trash. No. Everyone else is wrong. Everybody else is the problem. Then he sees Hyeonsu and Seonju talking at their desk, and jealousy immediately starts eating him alive. He thinks about how easy everything seems for Hyeonsu, how women naturally gravitate toward him, how people actually enjoy being around him. Meanwhile, he's stuck living this pathetic life. Back in his apartment, he stares at the doll. I want to touch real skin, not plastic. I want to feel another person, just once. Hyeonsu and Seonju are grabbing drinks outside the convenience store. Seonju apologizes for dragging him out there. She admits she was tired of drinking alone. Hyeonsu says he doesn't mind, then carefully asks about Manager Lee, specifically whether the two of them are dating. Seonju nearly chokes. What? Apparently this isn't the first time Manager Lee has told people they're together. In fact, she reveals he's the reason the employee before Hyeonsu quit. He kept hitting on her, following her around and spreading rumors about their relationship until one day she stopped coming into work entirely. At that moment, Hyeonsu realizes his instincts were right. This is the exact same pattern all over again. As they're talking, a woman in a red tracksuit walks past, and Hyeonsu freezes. Is it her? The smell even seems to drift past him. Then the woman disappears. Seonju asks what's wrong, and Hyeonsu quickly brushes it off, but internally he's shaking. As they continue talking, Seonju casually mentions that Manager Lee smells even worse during the summer, and they have a chuckle. That night, Seonju returns home. The second she opens the door, she smells something strange. It's that odor again. She assumes there's something wrong with the vents. What she doesn't realize is that somebody is watching her. Manager Lee sits alone in his apartment staring at a monitor, watching her through a hidden camera, talking to the screen the same way he talks to his dolls. His eyes twitch. "You hung out with that pretty boy again, didn't you?" He keeps rambling, convinced she mocks him behind his back, convinced she secretly hates him. Then he smiles. "If you treat me like a monster, I'll become one." While stuffing so much fried chicken in his mouth, he keeps talking to the screen, calling her a slut and threatening her, punishing her for crimes that only exist inside of his head. Then he starts laughing. "I am a monster. I am a demon." And the more he laughs, the less it sounds like a joke. Hyeonsu starts going on morning runs, not because he enjoys running, but because if he stays too long, his brain starts wandering back to her. At this point, he's just trying to keep the oxygen from flowing to his brain before the paranoia wins. After his run, he meets with a detective from his old town. The first thing he asks is, "Have you caught her yet?" The detective sighs. No. And Hyeonsu is visibly frustrated. Because how do you lose a woman like that? There are cameras on every corner. How can someone just disappear? He asks how much longer he's supposed to stay in hiding. How much longer is he supposed to keep changing his life because of her? The detective tells him they're doing everything they can. After all, she killed one officer and nearly killed another. They also discovered 2 bodies inside her apartment. Hyeonsu admits he couldn't eat for days after finding out what that smell actually was. The detective tells him they finally have a lead though. The injured officer regained consciousness. We flash back to the officer recounting what happened. On the way back to the precinct, the stalker sat in the back of the police vehicle giggling to herself, geeking. The younger officer asks what she finds so funny, then reminds her that she killed someone. She completely ignores him, still laughing, still smiling. Eventually, she turns towards him with that giant, unsettling grin. Then she says, "Sir, do you know that I'm happy?" The officer just stares at her. She says she's happy because her one and only technician will never forget her, and that's all she ever wanted. The officer asks if she feels guilty. The stalker looks genuinely confused. Why would I feel guilty for fighting for love? The officer tells her none of this matters because she's going to prison, and the older detective driving tells him to stop talking to her. Stop provoking her. The stalker nods, then smiles. "You're right, but I wasn't planning on doing that anyway." The officer asks what the hell that means, and before he can finish speaking, the woman opens her mouth wide, way wider than any human should, then starts pulling something out slowly, carefully. A knife. The officer is horrified. The stalker smiles. "You didn't know about this?" A second later, she plunges the knife into the driver. The vehicle swerves and crashes, and chaos erupts. As the officer drifts in and out of consciousness, he sees her standing over him, laughing. Then she disappears into the night. The detective explains that hiding objects inside the body like that is apparently a rare circus skill. It's niche enough that they think it might help identify her. So for the first time in a long time, they finally have something. The detective asks Hyeonsu to keep hanging in there. He reluctantly agrees, and meanwhile, Hyeonsu stands outside her apartment staring at her front door, just standing there, frozen. Hyeonsu happens to walk by and immediately notices something is wrong. He asks why she's been standing there so long. She notices he's not wearing his glasses and tells him he looks much more handsome without them. Hyeonsu awkwardly thanks her before asking what's wrong. Hyeonsu hesitates, then admits something has felt strange lately, like somebody has been in her apartment, like things aren't where she left them, like someone has been watching her. Hyeonsu stops smiling because he's heard this story before, and he knows exactly how bad it can end. A woman comes home from work and immediately wrinkles her nose. That smell again. The same awful smell that's been lingering around her apartment for weeks. She opens a window hoping fresh air will help. Then she tells herself she's probably imagining things. Maybe she's paranoid or overstimulated from work. Maybe nobody is breaking into her apartment, right? This woman is Mi-jung, the employee who quit before Hyeonsu got hired. Back when she worked at the company, Seonju would constantly catch her looking exhausted. One day, Seonju asks how she's holding up. Mi-jung immediately brings up Manager Lee. This man made her skin crawl. Meanwhile, Manager Lee is inside of her apartment, laying on her bed like a psychopath. He tells us that Mi-jung joined the company. He immediately knew they were destined to be together. The first day he met her, he introduced himself and offered to help if she needed anything, then asked what she was doing after work. Bro wasted no time. He suggested grabbing a beer so he could tell her about the company. Luckily, the other female coworker shut it down instantly. She told him they already had plans, and Manager Lee was disappointed, but figured he could take things slow. The problem was, Mi-jung started avoiding him, and that bothered him more than it should have. Eventually, he discovered something interesting. His family owned the apartment complex. There are no security cameras or custodians, and thanks to an old master key card, he could enter any unit in the building. This place wasn't an apartment complex to him. It was his kingdom, and he was the gatekeeper. At first, he claims he was just curious, so he entered her apartment. Then he brought hidden cameras online and started watching her. He started learning everything about her life, and it's funny how curiosity always turns into felony charges. He watches her argue with family about money, sees her struggle through daily life, and listens as she breaks down in tears. He convinces himself that this somehow means they're soulmates. He even reaches towards the monitor, telling her to stop playing games and to come to him, because in his mind, they're destined to be together. One day, Manager Lee puts both of his sweaty hands on Mi-jung's shoulders and tells her he likes the way her hair smells and asks if anything has been bothering her lately. Mi-jung is visibly uncomfortable, but Manager Lee thinks he's being charming, and that's the problem. Every creepy thing he does gets translated into this romance inside of his own head. Later that day, he heads back to her apartment. He's already planning their future together, and he claims he has to go clean his room and put the dolls away, thinking about where he'll take her on her first date. Then suddenly, the keypad beeps. Mi-jung comes home early, and Manager Lee panics. He wasn't supposed to get caught. Mi-jung enters the apartment and notices the smell is worse than ever. Then she notices something strange. A hat that doesn't belong to her. She looks into the mirror and sees Manager Lee standing behind her. She screams and he grabs her, and from that point, everything changes. Back in the present, manager Lee sits behind one of his dolls talking about Mi-jung. He claims they could have been together if she hadn't overreacted, then casually starts talking about Seonju instead, like he's replacing one obsession for another. But as he pans to the monitor, he sees Seonju hanging out with Hyeonsu, and his mood changes completely. Jealousy bubbles up, and his resentment starts boiling over. We open inside a dim basement. Mi-jung wakes up tied to a chair, disoriented, petrified, with no one else around. Then she hears footsteps. Manager Lee slowly walks downstairs. She immediately demands to know why he's doing this and why he's keeping her here. Back in the present, Seonju is standing outside her door, explaining everything to Hyeonsu. She keeps getting the feeling that someone has been inside her apartment. Things feel different, moved around, and wrong somehow. Then she mentions something else, the smell. She's been smelling this horrid smell for weeks. The second she says that, Hyeonsu's expression changes. He asks if he can search her apartment. Now, Seonju is confused but agrees. Meanwhile, manager Lee is watching everything through hidden cameras. The second he sees Hyeonsu enter her apartment, he loses his mind. Hyeonsu pulls out a camera detector. Seonju asks why he has one, and honestly, after hearing this man's backstory, that's probably the least surprising thing about him. He began scanning the apartment, and it's nothing, no signal. Then suddenly, a loud beep. He finds 5 hidden cameras. Manager Lee starts panicking, completely unraveling, while Hyeonsu calmly disables every camera. The two decide they'll go to the police first thing tomorrow morning, and because Seonju definitely isn't sleeping in that apartment tonight, she stays with Hyeonsu. That evening, Hyeonsu tells her everything. Seonju listens in complete disbelief, because who the hell has a backstory like that? Eventually, she falls asleep, but Hyeonsu stays awake, thinking, trying to connect the dots, unable to shake the doubts. Was it manager Lee? Then another thought creeps into his mind. But what if it isn't? What if it's her? At this point, Hyeonsu doesn't know which possibility is worse. Then suddenly, he hears beeps, the front door keypad. His eyes snap open. At first, he assumes it's the neighbor. Then he remembers Seonju is the neighbor. The keypad beeps again, and the door unlocks. And standing there with the hammer in his hand is manager Lee smiling. He looks directly at Hyeonsu and says, "It's time for us to go to hell together." The second manager Lee rushes forward with the hammer, Hyeonsu pulls out a taser and fires. The electricity hits him, and manager Lee flinches, but that's about it. This man tanks the laser like a Dark Souls boss, then calmly grabs it out of Hyeonsu's hand. Hyeonsu immediately realizes this situation has gone from bad to catastrophic. Manager Lee slowly raises the hammer and thwacks Hyeonsu in the head. He glances towards Seonju and says the taser will actually make things easier. After all, he still needs the mover. Everything goes black. When Hyeonsu finally wakes up, the first thing he notices is the smell. That smell. Only this time it's stronger. So strong, it feels like it's coating the inside of his throat. His mouth is taped shut and his hands are restrained. He jerks upright. He sees Seonju tied up nearby. She's awake, but she isn't looking at him. She's staring across the room, frozen. Hyeonsu follows her gaze and finally discovers where that smell has been coming from. Mi-jung, or what's left of her. Her body is still tied to a chair. Nothing but a rotten skeleton now, still sitting exactly where manager Lee left her. The smell, the cameras, and the disappearances, everything suddenly clicks into place. Hyeonsu begins freaking out, and then they hear footsteps. Manager Lee slowly walks downstairs, stretching, complaining about how heavy both of them were. He casually points towards the corpse and tells Hyeonsu to say hello to his former coworker. Apparently this is Mi-jung, the woman he once loved. At least that's what he tells himself. Hyeonsu starts screaming through the tape, and manager Lee tells him to stop. Nobody can hear him anyway. His house is miles away from everyone else. Then he starts talking, really talking, about how his parents sent him away, and how people looked at him, how everyone treated him like a monster. He says he became a demon because the world never accepted him. We flash back to when he first kidnapped Mi-jung. She's tied up in the same basement, demanding to know why he's doing this. Manager Lee tells her he's doing it because they're destined to be together, that she just doesn't realize it yet. He explains he's been watching her for a long time and that they're both lonely, and that nobody would notice if they disappeared. Mi-jung immediately calls bullshit. She tells him people absolutely would look for her. Manager Lee smiles and then shows her the messages he sent from her phone. He messaged her family and her coworkers, making it seem like she left willingly. He tells her she should be happy. She has someone who will never leave her, someone who belongs only to her. Then she absolutely cooks him. She tells him, destiny doesn't mean shit. You're pathetic. And if you're so miserable, maybe you should go deal with your own problems instead of ruining somebody else's life. Then she tells him something he clearly never got over. She calls him ugly over and over again, relentlessly. Manager Lee completely snaps. He brings the hammer down on her, and unfortunately for him, he killed her too quickly. Back in the present, he looks towards Sunju. Mi-jong didn't work out, but Seonju will, at least in his mind. He says he spent years preparing for this, preparing a place for his future bride. And Hyeonsu ruined everything, an uninvited guest. Manager Lee starts giggling, saying people will just assume the two of them ran away together. Young people disappear all the time, and nobody will question it. Then he turns towards Hyeonsu and says Seonju needs to watch him break the pretty boy first. After that, she'll understand, and after that, she'll choose him. He walks behind Hyeonsu, studying his face, trying to decide what to destroy first. His teeth, his nose. At this point, Seonju is absolutely horrified. Then Hyeonsu blurts out the only thing he can think of. The police are coming. Manager Lee pauses. Hyeonsu quickly explains that he already reported the hidden cameras, and that he spoke with a detective. He says if nobody reaches him, they'll come looking. Manager Lee immediately calls him a liar. Nothing Hyeonsu says is going to save him now. He's already come too far. Hyeonsu keeps insisting he's telling the truth, and the police know they're on their way. Manager Lee laughs, telling him to stop talking, then grabs his face, mocking him, making fun of how scared he looks. And right before he can swing the hammer, everyone freezes. Once, then again, repeatedly, without stopping. Mr. Lee stares toward the front door. Who the hell would be showing up at this hour? The doorbell rings again and again and again without stopping. He finally stomps upstairs and yells, "Who is it?" Silence. He asks again. Nothing. At this point, he's convinced some teenager is messing with him, so he walks over and peeks through the door. Nobody. And then he opens it. Mr. Lee clicks his tongue, assuming it was some punk pulling a prank. Then he heads back downstairs, but while he's gone, a familiar hand slowly slips through the basement window. By the time Mr. Lee returns, Hyeonsu is practically throwing himself against the chair, trying to desperately say something through the tape. Seonju is doing the same. Both of them are staring toward the darkness behind him. Mr. Lee looks annoyed. He asks why they're acting like they've seen a ghost, and then laughs. If anything, you should be afraid of me. He raises the hammer slowly, enjoying the moment. 1. The hammer rises higher. 2. He grabs Hyeonsu by the hair, preparing to swing. Then Mr. Lee freezes. For a second, he doesn't understand what happened. Then he looks around, a knife sticking out of his back. Behind him stands the last person anyone wanted to see, our one and only stalker, smiling. Mr. Lee stumbles backward in horror. The stalker starts cackling. Mr. Lee points at her and screams, "A monster!" "Sir." The stalker takes a step forward, still smiling. Mr. Lee swings the hammer wildly. She ducks underneath it, drops low, and slices straight through both of his Achilles. Mr. Lee collapses, screaming. The stalker walks towards him, knife in hand, still smiling. "How dare you?" She stabs him. "How dare you try to hurt my one and only technician? And you ugly as hell? You ugly mother..." Mr. Lee starts begging, apologizing, crying, but none of it matters. The stalker walks over and keeps stabbing while laughing the entire time. Hyeonsu and Seonju are completely frozen. When she's finally finished, she stands up, then turns towards Hyeonsu, immediately switching back to the lovesick smile. "My one and only technician. I've saved you again." She tilts her head almost proudly, then asks, "What would you do without me?" Hyeonsu just stares, completely traumatized. The stalker giggles, then paints a smile across his face using Mr. Lee's blood. And suddenly, Hyeonsu gets the worst feeling of deja vu, like he's lived this exact moment before. She leans close and tells him not to worry. It's time for them to part ways again. For now. But he can't escape fate forever. After all, every princess eventually returns to her prince. She waves goodbye, then disappears into the darkness, just as the police begin flooding the property. And while everyone else is relieved, Hyeonsu isn't, because he already knows the truth. She'll come back. Where does he go? Where is he supposed to run away this time? Epilogue. Later, one of the detectives meet with a journalist. She starts demanding information, and the journalist tries brushing her off, but eventually gives in. Apparently, their investigation uncovered something strange. There aren't many people in Korea skilled enough to hide and retrieve objects from inside their bodies. It's an extremely niche skill, which narrowed their search down considerably. The journalist pulls out an old photograph, and in the picture, we see a photo of the stalker swallowing a sword. The picture was taken in the 60s, the last known photograph before her entire group vanished. He explains this was the only troop known for employing sword swallowers, and the detective studies the picture. Then she notices something. The location, the place where the photograph was taken, is Murder Island, and that's where this story ends for now. First of all, Hyeonsu needs to start carrying sage, holy water, a taser, an exorcist, a shotgun, because there is no reason one man should attract this many crash outs. Like, my guy escaped one stalker only to run directly into another one. And somehow the original stalker is still the bigger problem. If you liked the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what you thought about Manager Lee, because that man was a walking HR violation.